all jobs are communication jobs. Sometimes we say, let's just put something out there and see what sticks. And my preference is to say, let's just wait a hot minute. Let's have a good discussion about strategy, because the closer we can get to that, the fewer times we'll have to iterate before we really start hitting on all cycles. Data gives us an illusion of precision. I can measure it right down to the, 100th of a percentage point. 87.235% of our visitors did this. And so we make those decisions. It isn't always the total picture. Sometimes we just got to slow down, provide great customer service, talk to our customers, get feedback from a small sample. It just rounds it out.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of the Digital Revolution Podcast. I'm your host, Eli Adams. Today's episode is brought to you by fireusmarketing.com, where SEO solutions pave the way to digital excellence. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode where we are joined by Kristine Widtfeldt. Kristine is a fractional CMO with a heart for startups, killer brand building, content strategy, and marketing innovation. She is relentlessly customer focused and knows how to target a customer and motivate action. Because if you are talking to everyone, you are talking to no one. For more than 20 years, she has been a CEO, CMO, VP, and president of leading brands in customer goods, services, and education. She's also been a film critic, magazine editor, broadcaster, executive coach, and has ghostwritten more than a dozen books and training courses, which means she still doesn't know what she wants to be when she grows up, but loves the journey. You can find more about Kristine on LinkedIn or at her website, brioandzing.com, which is spelled BRIOANDZING.com. Welcome to the show, Kristine.
Thanks. That was a great introduction. Thanks so much.
I'm really excited to have you on board. You have a wealth of knowledge in the digital space, and I am excited to dig in and learn more about your history, how you got into the space, and then really where you see things going in the future. So tell me about yourself. Where did you grow up? What did you want to be when you grew up? Tell me everything.
I grew up all over. I am the kid of two educators. And so I grew up in Kentucky, in Washington, in Texas, a little bit in Utah. In college, I studied English. Not because I had a great handle on what I wanted to be when I grew up, but I knew that I loved to read, I loved to write, and I loved to speak. And I figured something magical would happen around there. And honestly, I have learned, Eli, that all jobs are communication jobs. So if you can read, write, and speak well, it's a fantastic foundation. I love my degree in English. People often say, what can you do with that? And my answer is often, what can't you do with that? I think it's a great springboard in industry for sure.
Yeah, communication is huge. Like even in marriage, like being a roommate at college, like it really helps in every aspect of life, right?
Yep, it sure does. And the ability to read email quickly, to understand the gist of a message, to be able to respond with clarity. I think that's super important, whether you're an accountant or a graphic designer or a social media wonk, whatever you do, the ability to understand and return information quickly is a huge asset.
It's interesting you say that. I think about, my childhood growing up in high school. I wasn't a good test taker. I wasn't good at really comprehending. And what I found out later was that I was an auditory learner. So we have this technology nowadays, and I don't know if it's fair to say there's no excuses now because of the technology we have. But for me, it was all about listening. So when audiobooks came out, podcasts came out, and even when I write emails and text, I use my phone and my computer to read back what I wrote. And so that I can make sure it sounds good for one. But then when I get a really long text or a really long email, I'll highlight the whole thing and have it read it to me because I comprehend quite a bit more. Have you ran into anybody who has the same?
I think all of us are. I'm a huge book reader, but I no longer read books with my eyes because it allows me now and I love podcasts. I love the podcast format. So I'm a learning junkie. But to be able to learn while I'm driving or while I'm running or something like that, it's just a huge, huge boon. And I feel like we can process a lot more information because we do process it differently. Like Eli, you were probably in grade school 2 years or 10 years too early.
I know, right? Yeah, I wish they would have had that. Even up into college where I had to read a lot. I always wish that there were the audiobooks or, anything that would help me with that. And I think I would have think I would have excelled a little more than I did
Heck
if I
yeah.
would have had that technology back then.
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay, so tell me about your upbringing. Did you want to, I mean, how early did you know you wanted to go into English and
Oh
communication and all
gosh.
that?
I think the bigger ask is when did I know that marketing was it? And that came
Mhm.
late. To be honest, I think a lot of people who are new to the field are jaded about marketing. Marketing feels
Mm.
just something they did to me when I was new in my career. I had this purity of language concept, like I was going to be an editor or a writer. And my husband kept encouraging me to look at marketing, and I was like, "Isn't that for uh, used car salesmen?" Or it felt like a slippery slope to me. No bash against used car salesmen because
Yeah.
there are a lot of really good ones. Um, but I
Yeah.
just didn't know enough about marketing to realize that the definition of marketing is adding value, creating and adding value, and then showing it to an audience. And once I really got my arms around the value that marketing can bring to connecting customers with what they actually want and need, and that can be transformative for them, it
Mhm.
it made my journey in marketing a lot faster and more joyful for sure.
So you have a lot of experience in marketing. Where did you dip your toes in first and kind of realize, okay, this
Great
is really where I
question.
want to go?
It actually was working for an advertising agency, a small boutique agency near Brigham Young University in Provo, Utah. Um, and my job there was largely project management, but we dealt with
Mm.
such a broad variety of clients, some that were in consumer packaged goods and some that were in B2B, all different kinds of things, education, training, consultative services. And that breadth, the through line was marketing. So I began managing projects. And then I quickly started falling in love with all of our clients and what they did.
Hmm.
And I wanted to not only
Mhm.
do product or projects for them, I was like, I could do your messaging and I could build your brand out. And it's not uncommon that sometimes people who are in that role in an agency end up getting pilfered by one of their clients. And that's what happened to me. I
Yeah.
started in
Okay.
agency life and then very quickly got hired by one of our clients. And then it just kind of kept going and growing from there.
So I think that if anyone's out there listening and you're in college and you're wondering, I want to do marketing, but I'm not exactly sure where I should go. I think your path is a very common one. It's
Mhm.
it's one that I followed as well, where an agency is kind of the first stepping stone, and it allows you to figure out what area of marketing you're most interested and good
Yeah,
at.
it's a buffet, right? If you work in it, especially
Yeah.
if you're working in a digital agency or a social media agency or a fractional consultative agency like I do now a bit, you get to
Hmm.
taste a little bit of everything. And there's something in that buffet that's going to put its hand up and say, "This is for you."
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Do you feel like there is anything in your childhood that led you to the more creative side? It seems like you have a creative and very strategic mind. Was
Oh,
there something that your parents encouraged you to do that maybe lended you those skills?
no, I think my parents are awesome and they are not vicarious livers. They have 3 kids who are radically different in the career paths that we chose.
Hmm.
And so my parents were really supportive of whatever lights your fire, that's what you should do. I think that's what I try to be that as both a mom and a mentor with people who are working on my
Yeah.
teams. Um, yes, there's a job to do, but we do the things naturally that are in our state of flow. There are some, I call it state of flow, state of go, and state of no. In every job, there are things that you do that have state of flow where you're just so excited that the
Hmm.
time just passes and you love it. We've heard of that, a flow state.
Yep.
Then there's
Hmm.
go state, which is I can do this and I can stay on task, but it might not be my love. And then there's state of no, where I just struggle with it. For me, that was always the financial side of the business. I can work my way around a P&L, but it's going to take me twice as long as someone for whom it's state of flow. And so I
Hmm.
think one of the great things that my parents did was help us try a little bit of everything. We were trying everything from
Yeah.
basketball to piano to trying out for chess club and debate and theater. And you can pretty well identify, even as a teenager or a college student, what's your state of flow, what's your state of go, what's your state of no. And even if the no feels unrealistic, my counsel to
Hmm.
new grads or people looking at this field or any field is do what you love. Don't chase the paycheck. I mean, paychecks are important, but don't chase the paycheck only. Do the thing that you love because you will be so good at it that the cream will rise to the top. My husband once
Hmm.
upon a time told me, "You have taken jobs I never would have taken and you've been promoted
Mhm.
to jobs that I could probably never get. And I think that's a really good takeaway for people early on in their career. Take the thing that's going to give you relevant experience that excites you. Because if it excites and delights you, you're going to be so excited to get up the next morning and go do the job that even if it pays a little bit less or it's a little bit different, you're going to shine. You're just going to shine. And then
Yeah.
you'll find that more opportunities in that flow state make themselves available, even if you're pursuing something that's a niche. I have a son who's
Mhm.
pursuing animation. And if I were super pragmatic, I might say, oh, that's really nichey, or you have to live in certain parts of the country, or you know what?
Yeah.
He's so good at it. And it is a flow state for him when he's working on animation that I have no doubt that he will find his way and blaze a trail.
That's so powerful. I love those three, and really for a lot of the business owners out there, I think they need to take note on that because I've worked with a lot of customers and clients in the past, whether it was doing agency work or coaching, where they, as owners, try to wear every single hat, and they're just not good at some of them, right? And it's, if they look at the 80-20 rule and look at what 20% moves 80% of the needle that they like and enjoy, and the rest of that, they use those three steps that you just talk about. You said the flow, the go, and the no,
Yep.
right? If they use that and said, which one is the no that I can pass off to somebody else in the office?
Yeah.
I think that one, they'd be more happy, and the person who is good at it, who has the flow for the other areas, is going to help drive your business even more as
Yeah.
well, right?
There's somebody who's really excited to do logistics if you're not, or marketing operations if you're not. I think the other thing with flow,
Yeah.
go, and no is sometimes there's too much in flow. There are people like me who I really love doing it all. And so if it's still too much to do effectively, then you have to ask yourself, what's the flow state thing that only I can do? And even if you
Hmm.
love something, that's really hard, I think, for founders and entrepreneurs that I've worked with. They're used to wearing many hats, and a lot of them love wearing many hats, right? So, flow state for
Hmm.
them might be in 10 different things. So, then you have to ask that entrepreneur, what's the thing that only you can do? And even if it's a flow state item for you, you need to delegate it because someone else can do it. So hang on to the stuff
Right.
that's flow state for you and that is exclusively tied to your brand or the brand of the company. Because that you want to make sure you're not outsourcing.
I feel like if we stopped right now, that would be value enough for the people who have been listening.
Yay!
That's value for me as a business owner, thinking about what I'm good at and what's my flow, no, and go. I'm going to write that down somewhere in here, and I'm going to ask myself that every day. Should I be working on this or should I
Yeah.
outsource that?
You
So
gotta you gotta
thank
let
you
it
for
flow.
that,
You gotta let
that
it go
wisdom.
if you're gonna let it grow, right?
Yeah. So what are you working on right now that gets you up in the morning, that
Ah.
gets you excited and yeah, what gets you going?
From my bio, you can tell I really don't know what I want to be when I grow up. I'm motivated by variety and challenge and
Hmm.
change. And I think if you're in the digital marketing landscape, then you're probably a lot like me. Yes, there are things that we do again and again and again, but I love the opportunity to keep tweaking and tweaking. For me, one of the projects that I'm working on right now is working on a rebrand for an educational
Hmm.
service. And I think it's really exciting. People sometimes think education has to fit in this box. And I'm working with an amazing leader who she's very open to lots of change and reinvention. And so that's really refreshing for me to have somebody look at a space that typically is super conservative and wanting to shake it up
Hmm.
because there sometimes is a gap between higher education or education at all and the students who are in it. The students are bright and motivated and really adept at working with these platforms. And often the educational institutions are slower to catch up. So I'm excited to kind of help an educational client that's been historically very conservative looking at a rebrand. I'm working with another client who has recently merged a variety of brands, and the brands are very dissimilar. And so, trying to help them walk through, are they a house of brands or a branded house? And how do we tell the story of the new blended family? I think there's a lot of fun
Hmm.
challenge with that. Each one of the brands that are under their new umbrella have very distinct social media presences and followings. So we're really trying to unwind right now. Do we unite them or do we keep them separate? And I think I love the strategy part of it. So I think putting together
Yeah.
the strategy is really fun. I think that's one of the challenges in digital marketing is that we rush to deploy really fast. And then we tell ourselves, and this is true, I can iterate real time. Let's just get something out there and see what sticks. That's so, so true. But I also believe that not just practice makes perfect, but perfect practice makes perfect. So the more that you can organize your strategy and your messaging before you start putting stuff out there digitally and seeing what sticks, you're going to have better outcomes and the walk will be shorter. I don't know if that's in your
Yeah.
experience too, but because digital media is easy, accessible, and low cost, sometimes we say, let's just
Hmm.
put something out there and see what sticks. And my preference is to say, let's just wait a hot minute. Let's have a good discussion about strategy, because the closer we can get to that, the fewer times we'll have to iterate before we really start hitting on all cycles.
Yeah, I have seen that actually. I've done some tests in the past where I've put out 30 blog posts in 30 days, or
Wow.
I've done one blog post a week for 30 weeks. And the ones where I've done the one blog post a week where I took some time, I made sure it was, everything it was supposed to be answered, every single question, the consistency over the 30 weeks actually got me more results and better results than
Then
the
the
30 posts
daily.
in 30
Oh,
days.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So, like,
That
truth is spoken there.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so the education piece, I want to dig into that a little bit because in my background, I've been over both digital marketing as well as digital product management, and the digital product management is really where I think I learned the most on how to listen to the customer so that we could update that technology. And it sounds like what you're doing with this education piece is that you're listening to those who are being educated and saying, where can we update? How can we make this better? Is that fair to say? Is that
Yeah.
what you're kinda doing?
That's straight on. You're not, I think in an ideal situation, you are always talking to both your client because they're so knowledgeable, but you're also talking to the customer. So on the
Mhm,
education side, the more you can talk to your students, to the student body who are going to
mhm,
be actually consumers of the media, so much the better. And I think it's really interesting how sometimes there's a very pronounced gap between a client and their customer. And not always. And sometimes a customer and a client are really aligned. But I think we're missing something huge if we only talk to clients about what they need and want. We have to look at and not just what they do, like we have to talk to them too. You have to do both. I actually think
mhm.
you need to watch their behavior. So I think analytics are super important, looking at your dashboard, but then you've also got to get some qualitative feedback with them telling you what they think. Because sometimes what they tell you doesn't match what they do.
Yes, yes, qualitative versus quantitative. That's exactly it. I've worked with a lot of companies in the past, and I'm sure you have done the same, where we had the data, but we were listening to the 1% who was like the squeaky wheel gets the grease type,
Yes.
and we were making
Yes.
changes for the 1% over the 99% where the
Yes.
data was showing adjustments needed to be made.
You're so right. If you're submitting a survey, and you get a 2% response on your survey, then your surveys are always going to be skewed because they're skewed by
Mhm.
the people who respond to surveys.
Right. Yep. Exactly.
What about the 98% who did not take your survey? What do they think?
Yeah, and that's where a lot of the online data comes into play. So you have your surveys, but then you have like your Google Analytics or Adobe Target or whatever else you have where you're gathering that information. That's where you see the majority of stuff. And you're not going to see 100% of it because of cookies and browsers and how they
Sure.
work and stuff. But that's where you'll see the majority, and that's where you need to make those decisions and then align that with those more, the louder people. And depending on what industry you're in and stuff, there can be a mix. But finding the point is that finding a good balance between the data and what your customers actually want is the most important thing.
Yep. Yep.
Right. I do a lot of SEO webinars and trainings and stuff. And my takeaway is always, and tell me if you agree with this,
Okay.
but there's a bunch of like technical SEO that you can do, and there's a bunch of like off page, on page, everything. But if you don't know anything about that and all you do is focus on giving the best customer service, chances are you're going to hit like 70% of the SEO pieces anyway,
Yeah.
right? Customer service is number one.
I think
Hmm.
right now we are inundated with so much data and it's very granular. When we're doing digital marketing, we can slice and dice data all day long. And I think there's a real risk when we rely too heavily on driving by dashboards. Because
Yeah.
it's so rich. It's richer than it's ever been. As a digital marketer, we can look at all kinds of different crosshatches of information. The problem with that is that we're driving our car by looking at the dashboard and not by lifting up our chin and looking out the window and seeing if we're actually going to drive into a mountainside. There is
Yeah.
still a real place for great customer service, for anecdotal conversations, for, feedback that's super informal in these one-on-one calls or focus groups. And so the stuff that we can't really measure, but that we know is there, you cannot ignore that and just
Yeah.
drive by what the data says, for sure. And I think that's a real danger just because I call it the illusion of precision. Data gives us an illusion of precision. I can measure it right down to the hundredth of a percentage point. 87.235% of our visitors did this or converted on this,
Mm-hmm.
and so we make those decisions. And they're also it feels so fast. We're like it feels sure. It's got that illusion of precision. It feels sure. It feels easy.
Yeah.
It feels fast. It isn't always the total picture. I don't think it's erroneous. I'm not saying it's false. I'm just saying it's one piece of the puzzle. And sometimes we just got to slow down, provide great customer service, talk to our customers, get feedback from a small sample. And it just rounds it out.
So on that, along those same lines, then let's talk about mistakes. What are like in your experience some of the biggest mistakes that brands make when creating their
Oh,
customer or their messaging, and then when they make those,
sure.
how do they fix them?
Good question. I think sometimes one of the there are a couple that come to mind right away. I think one of the problems that we make when we are identifying messaging for our customers is we're trying to cast too wide a net because we're looking at TAM, SAM, SOM, right? We're looking at what our total addressable market is and then dialing that in at what we can get. We want that to be as big as possible. So we end up creating
Mhm.
a brand and messaging that is too generic and might be anything or anybody. Just as an example, I will share with you, I worked with a company for a while whose tagline was enjoy every moment. Now, those are three great
Mm.
words because they wanted it to
Mhm.
be broad for any other additional products that they might come out with. It's a lifestyle company, but they were primarily about home decor, home fragrance. Well, the challenge with enjoy every moment, if that's your main platform, is it could be toilet paper. I could enjoy every moment with great toilet paper. I enjoy every moment might be the tagline for chocolate. So we
Yeah.
and they were trying to cast such a wide net. So I think you need to be a little fearless with saying it is better to have a laser target on our market and have them when they hear our tagline go, that's for me, than to have a really broad messaging platform where it's too broad to attract anyone. So I would always encourage people be fearless and get smaller. The opportunity is in the small. I think some other mistakes that people make are, like I said, rushing to put some things out there and see what sticks. Rather, most problems are strategy problems. They're actually not marketing problems. What works? Can we change our creative? They're strategy problems. We haven't really identified who our target persona is or where they live or how they think because we're just in a rush. We're in a rush to see what sticks. So I would always tell people slow down for one and do your strategy work first because most marketing problems are strategy problems. And then number two, make sure that your brand is appropriately small and not so small that you're, not even able to run a sponsored ad or anything like that, but have it be very clear who you were talking to. And sometimes I'll meet with people and they're like, well, our target is college students. And I'm like, which
Yeah.
female college students, male college students, international college students, first generation college students, atypical college students? There are all
Mhm.
kinds of different people in that group. So when they say, college educated women with children at home, I'm like, okay, that's a start. But there's gotta be more than that, and the closer you can get to really understanding who your market is, the better that the messaging output will be from that.
Can we walk through how a company gets to that point? Like
Sure.
if I'm a new company and I'm not sure like who my audience is, I don't have a ton of data. How do I do that market research? How do I look at the competitive landscape? Like
Yeah.
how do I figure that out for my
Why
business?
okay, great question, and why, oh, why, oh, why do so many companies feel like it is either cheating or verboten to look at customer or to look at competitors? I have worked with
Yeah.
so many people who are like, "We don't even wanna look at the competitors because we're building our own brand." It is very hard to know who's on the playing field if you never look at them? So I'm like, first
Mm-hmm.
thing you need to do is, especially if you're looking at SEO, look at literally start typing in the terms that you want to own and see where your competitors fall. Are they already
Yeah.
using the language that you hope to own? And if they are, you have to ask yourself, is it realistic that we can wrestle this away from this competitor, or do we need to take a different tack? There are a million different words and approaches, and you can even create a word that doesn't exist. So create your own platform.
Mm-hmm.
You get to innovate. You get to, people talk a lot about being a category creator. You can create a category, even if you are working with something that's commoditized. I think, when we look at, I hope HubSpot doesn't mind this little shout out, but HubSpot pioneered the word inbound marketing. HubSpot's
Mm-hmm.
fundamentally a CRM. They do what a lot of great world-class CRMs do, but they created the term inbound marketing. So what are some of the ways that you can look at starting a meaningful digital strategy? First of all, do not be afraid to look at your competitors. Look at what's working, what they do well, what you like, not for the purpose of copying them, but for the purpose of
Mm-hmm.
understanding the competitive landscape. This is not cheating, people. This is the best market research you could do. So lean into what your competitors are doing by looking at what a customer would see when they are Googling or searching or looking at Amazon. The
Mm-hmm.
other thing that I think is really helpful is that sometimes we think in terms of solutions. We as business owners, we're like, we provide this great solution. And I wish we would think more in terms of problems. I know that this is marketing 101, but when I need a plumber, I may Google best plumber in the county, but I may
Yeah.
also look at clogged drain fix today. I may be searching
Mm-hmm.
for the thing that's problematic. Rather than just searching for tow trucks, I might be looking for fastest response tow truck, or I'm things that imply that I'm in trouble right now. And so we also have to look at
Mm-hmm.
all the different things that our avatars, our personas are searching for, and try to inhabit that, even if it's not what we want. This is something else that I try to work with clients on. Clients want to live in the space of the ideal. I tell them you've got to
Mm-hmm.
live in the space of the real. It's awesome that you want to own this word. It's awesome that you want to be this aspirational company. But if your target personas are actually searching for a different word, own that word. Go ahead and
Yeah.
own that word, and don't be embarrassed about it. I actually worked for a religious client once upon a time, and they wanted to be known by a set of very aspirational keywords. But people were
Mm-hmm.
often searching for them in some other words, and they weren't finding that material because they weren't searching for these aspirational words. So you have to meet your target market where they are, and then you get to start introducing, we're HubSpot. We do inbound marketing, because when you first start putting that message out there, nobody knows what it is. So you've got to be willing to meet them where they are and then pull them along to the category that you're trying to create. And as you do that, you'll find that the words that you own and the phrases that you own will become very unique. And your cost for those words will be manageable. If you're trying to do the exact same word that everybody else is, it can also um, be much more costly. So lean into the broken and problematic words. Lean into the
Mm-hmm.
words that your actual demographic might be looking for, even if they're not your aspirational words. And then think about the category that you can create, so that when they hit your website and hit your other media, you're starting to train them about the new category that you're creating. Even if it's a commodity, like, you can create an entirely new experience even from a
Mm-hmm.
commodity. Even if you're selling makeup, even if you're selling shoes, even if you're selling a therapy service or a plumbing service, you can create something that is a unique niche. You just got to make sure that you're not pitching that too early, because you'll be spending your money in the void.
Yeah. That's so good. I love that. So context matters, where you have like what you eventually want to get to, and then down at the bottom of the pyramid is the stuff that you start with, and a lot of that is, you don't start with, for example, if you're selling courses on, you know how to build a wall. Hammer is not the word that you want to rank for, because if you type in hammer, it could be there could be training courses, but it's most likely someone trying to sell you a hammer, right? And so
Exactly
you need to
right.
go down a step. Yeah, so you need to go down a step and say how to build a wall is the first thing. And
Mhm.
then once you rank for that, then you can creep up to
Can
some of the more difficult
layer
words
it.
and
It's
add
a
more of that
long
later.
game. Like
Yeah.
we're all in. I think that's the other thing that the other mistake that we make as digital marketers, because digital media is so fast, because we can post it quickly, we can track it quickly, we also give up too quickly. Um, this is a long game. It's a long tail game, and you have to keep playing it as well. You have clients who will improve their rankings in search through long, long effort, and they'll be like, "We're there!" And then they'll say, "Thank
Mhm.
you," and we're done, and they'll immediately start to slip and slip and slip. So it's something you have to be patient, don't give up too soon. And for me, too soon is months. I mean, it really can
Yeah.
be 6, 7 months before you start really seeing that ownership that you want. So I think it's be super patient. And then two, you've got to be willing to stick with it. It's not a mountain that you climb and then you own the mountain forever.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something you have to work on and build and maintain once you get to the top of that mountain too.
Yep.
Uh, I want to dig in a little bit more to the competition piece that you were talking about in the beginning. I remember lots of motivational speakers or podcasts, where they talk about like, don't focus on your competition, just focus on you. And I can understand that to a point, but what you're talking about here is find out what they're doing well, do it the same or better. But then once you have that strategy, then you don't have to worry about every single thing they're doing, every single post they do, but
No.
like do your analysis, understand what they're doing, and there's probably multiple clients that are doing it.
Yeah.
And then at least get to that same level and then say, "Okay, how can I be better?"
Well, and I don't even think better. I can't believe I'm saying that. The win comes in being different and not that different. You can win
Yeah.
with a 10% difference. That's the genius.
Yeah.
People often think, I have to have an entirely new concept. I have to have an
Right.
entirely new product that the market has never seen. The day is won by people who have fundamentally the same product because people know it, they understand it, but there is something that is just 10% different. So I think the question is not just how can we do it better? It's how can we do it 10 to 15% differently? And then we can capture the 85% awareness that already exists in the market. You're shortening the understanding because I think it's really hard to sometimes quantify better. How do I
Yeah.
quantify better? But I can easily quantify different. I can easily point out why I'm different than competitor B, C, and D. Another thing, if I can just mention
Mhm.
this, that I
Yeah.
think that we forget is that the status quo is sometimes our biggest competitor. Meaning, sometimes I work with clients and they say, we don't have any competitors. We are unique. And you're like, actually, people doing nothing at all or staying with the status quo might be your biggest competition. So one of the things I always encourage people to research as a competitor is status quo. If people don't buy your product or service, because that is another option for them, what does
Mhm.
that look like? So you can even position yourself against nothing. That's a really effective way. Like if nothing changes, nothing changes. That's a really helpful strategy to start with if you don't have a really great handle on the competitive landscape.
I want to dig into the 10% difference. So let's say I'm a marketing agency and there's somebody else who's a marketing agency and I want to be 10% different. I analyze them. But let's like, we're very similar in the products we offer, the services we offer. How do I go about being 10% different?
Ooh, good question. This is going to vary for every
Okay.
single product or service. So there is not a one size fits answer, but you need to look at your offering and then you need to look at some competitive offerings. And then you have to look at what's within your scope to change. So is the thing that we do that's 10% different, is it that we offer recyclable packaging? Is it that we guarantee same day shipping or free shipping? Is it
Mhm.
that every single month we offer a different BOGO on one of our options? And they just know we're the BOGO company. We have all of these things. One of my companies that I worked with was that people just knew that it had
Mhm.
a huge list, and every single month one of our products was buy one get one free. And we actually developed a culture and messaging around
Mhm.
being the BOGO offer. So it can be in
Yeah.
promotion, it can be in product, it can be in operations and delivery. You look at like a FedEx, they are an amazing delivery service, but they absolutely positively had to be there overnight. I look at makeup companies, and I'm thinking of one particular makeup company, and they took a product that had been around for a long, long time, mascara, and they elevated
Mm-hmm.
it by making one small change with the way that they talked about mascara.
Mm.
In one of the brands that I led, we looked at producing our product in a different color than was widely available in the market so that it was distinguished. When people saw our product, it was a very specific color, and it resonated. And then also the design of the product was slightly different. So it was a home decor product. And we decided that we were going
Yeah.
to really lean into farmhouse chic. We're like, a lot of people offer a similar product, but our version of it is going to have a lot of farmhouse chic. And there are a lot of other people who did something similar where it was a little bit more country Christian or where it was more snarky. And we're like, we're going to own the farmhouse chic because then
Yeah.
that vibe really does get out there and attract the people who resonate most deeply with our product. They would see it, they would see the color of it, of the product, and go, I know that it's not just the color that makes a difference. That's one difference, but the actual messaging on the product is going to be that way. So, for example, I'm a paper person. I love
Mm-hmm.
great journals, empty notebooks. There's a brand that I love because they have amazing design on their cover. Rifle Paper Company. There's a shout out to Rifle Paper Company. They do an amazing job of creating a floral aesthetic. They do it in a lot of different colors, that sort of thing. But one of their key differences is, yeah, they have journals and they have lined notebook pages, like most journals do. Their
Yeah.
paper is very standard, but the design aesthetic speaks to me. And so they've taken something that could be a commodity, like a lined journal or notebooks,
Yeah.
and they have done it 10% different by saying we're going to approach this differently from a design perspective. The cost of goods are probably still the same, the price points are still the same,
Mm.
but now they're speaking to an audience that wants their look. So that's what I
Yeah.
mean by what's the 10% difference.
Mhm.
Otherwise, I think we stop ourselves and we say, how can I open a notebook company or a home decor company or a coaching company? Because there are already so many of those. We just have to sit in that space of discomfort and say, what's the way that we do it a little bit differently? Are we the BOGO company?
Yeah.
Are we the fun, floral, flirty covers company? Are we the contemporary
Mm-hmm.
Christian company? Like, what's the flavor, the little spice that we add to the same stew that makes our people sit up and take notice?
Wow, that's so good. So good. So you've already given us a wealth of knowledge already today. So is there anything else that we missed, like from a tactical standpoint, that you would recommend if I'm a business owner and I want to elevate my presence online? Are there any other recommendations that you would give to me?
Um, I don't know if this is a recommendation that I would give to you, but if I were to future cast and say what's coming next, the thing that
Mm-hmm.
I love about our space is that it's going to I know a lot of people are super excited about AI, but I
Mm-hmm.
think this is another area where we can get lost in the dashboards. So the counsel that I would give to everyone is the tools are going to keep getting easier and easier, which I love. So once upon a time, doing great digital marketing required a really high level of technical expertise. We're seeing
Mm-hmm.
that change where the technical expertise, like once upon a day, you really had to be a good DBA. You really had to understand SQL to pull reports. A lot of those reports and analytics now are a lot easier, whether you're
Yeah.
using Tableau or Domo or just Google Analytics or the Meta platform.
Mm-hmm.
It's getting easier to get our data. And so my counsel is focus on your messaging more than ever and make sure that you as marketers are really leaning into the communications pieces. Technology continues to be important, but the technology is getting simpler and simpler, and it will over time. It's going to
Yeah.
be more affordable and easier to access, and the degree of difficulty to put great content out there and measure it is going to go down. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and we cannot just fill that with AI generated content. Right now, AI generated stuff is actually pretty easy to spot. Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
there's just a note of not quite there. I think using AI, this is another kind of watch out. Using AI is awesome as a foundation. It is the
Mm-hmm.
chicken stock to your soup, go ahead and use it. It's a great base. But then you've got to add your own carrots and potatoes and cilantro and parsley and everything else to give it that good
Yeah.
body and that unique flavor. So use the easier tools, but don't rely wholly on them because you still got to add personality and a brain to everything you do. And that's, I think, my watch out to all digital marketers for sure.
Wow, that's such a fun comparison. Be the chicken stock.
Yeah.
I like that. um, okay, so that kind of answers the tactical question and the future question.
Oh,
So if I am a business owner, I mean, unless you have more on the future stuff,
yeah.
but if I'm a business owner and I'm saying here's where we're going, AI is okay to use as long as you use it as the base, which I agree. Use it as the base, humanize it, like it takes out 50 to 60% of the upfront work, but don't trust it all the way. Don't just use it as all of the content. Put it
Yep.
through a bunch of filters, humans, all of that, right?
Yep.
Um, but if you're a business owner and you're not using AI to some capacity, I think that you're going to be left behind. I think that
I think
the
not only are you
amount,
gonna be left behind, but you're gonna spin your wheels unnecessarily. Like, why
yeah,
would I walk to Chicago just to prove that I know how to walk? If I can get on a plane or a train or an automobile, sorry for that reference. If I
yeah,
can get on a plane, get on a plane. Like, make your life easier and then enjoy Chicago. Just
yeah.
it's like we're not. Why beat your head against a wall? These tools are awesome and they're getting ubiquitous and easy. So use them,
Hmm.
but don't use them so blindly that we become addicted to or dependent on them to make all of our decisions.
100%. So I think a lot of times when people talk about AI, they're referring specifically to ChatGPT and the content
Mhm.
piece, but there are so many other AI tools. That one, for example, that saves me a lot of time as I'm going back through and editing these podcasts. I'll export sort of the draft version. I'll put it into an AI tool and it will pull out a lot of highlights that I can use on social media, and then I'll go and edit those. So instead of watching, a full hour long podcast, it will pull out those important parts,
Mhm.
and then I can go and pick and choose and say, use this, use that, right? And that's
That's
not like,
perfect.
yeah, totally different than the Chat GPT where people are just using it for content. But um, wow, that's really good stuff.
Yeah,
Really good
fun
stuff.
stuff.
So I wrap up all of my podcasts with a couple different questions. So I want to ask you some of these questions.
Okay.
So first question is, if you could go back in time and give your younger self some advice, what would that be?
Um, don't worry. It's all going to work out. And take the job you love, not the job you think you have to take.
That's powerful. The don't worry one has been in almost every single podcast. So
It's true. Things
so
work out.
so it's
They really
yeah,
do.
they really do. And then the take the job you love, like instead of just chasing money all the time, I think is really powerful if you're a younger person trying to figure out what to do. And it's in hindsight, it's easy for us to see that. The jobs that I have loved are the ones where I have been promoted more than any other job that I've gone for
Mhm.
money. Is that the same
Yeah,
case for you?
your joy is the greatest compensation, and I have found that I have not had to sacrifice compensation along the way.
Yeah.
The money will come, the right amount of
Mhm.
money will come. It really will. If you're doing what you're called to do, the money will come.
Yeah, love it. Okay, second question. Do you have any books, podcasts, or leaders that currently inspire you right now?
Oh, so many. I love the podcast Hidden Brain. You might think that's crazy, but it's great for a marketer. It really talks about how we think, some of the misconceptions that we have. It's fantastic. It's one of my favorites. I also really like the podcast Midnight Founders podcast, which is put on by it's a Utah-based podcast. It's put out by Central Bank Vault and Rev Road, where you get to get a front row seat to the entrepreneur's journey. So I think
Yeah.
you get to learn from their mistakes, without having to make them yourself. And they're also really inspiring and really interesting. And you get to learn a lot about imposter syndrome. Like if you think you can't or you're stuck in the journey that you're having, listening to other people who are wildly successful, but who have also failed spectacularly and hit hard walls can be really helpful.
Yeah.
Um, Influencers that I love to listen to, I love Adam Grant, the Harvard psychologist and sort of think expert. I think he's
Hmm.
fantastic. I really like Scott Jeffrey Miller, who just wrote Career on Course, who's about intentionality in your career. And I love Liz Wiseman, the author of the book Multipliers. She has the
Yeah.
entire Wiseman group in teaching about
Yeah.
leadership and how we can be better leaders. I don't know. Those are some of the things that I'm following right now.
Well, that's awesome. Liz Wiseman's the only one that I've heard of, so I have a lot of others. Multipliers is one of my favorite books. Best leadership book probably out there, right?
I agree. It's a
Um,
fave.
so good. But the other ones I'm gonna have to go check out. So thank you for
Sure.
those recommendations. Kristine, how can people get in touch with you if they want to?
They can find me on LinkedIn. I know my name's hard to
Okay.
spell, but it's Kristine with a K and Widtfeldt with lots of D's and T's. So I would love to, I'm always loving to make new connections with people who inspire me to be better on LinkedIn. They can also visit me at my website, Brio, BRIO, and Zing, Brio and Zing.com. And it's not unintentional that the word branding is hiding in there. But Brio just means, that you're brave, and Zing means you put your
Yeah.
own stamp on it. So I believe in living life bravely and putting your own stamp on it.
Wow. Well, this has been a pleasure. I'm so grateful that I've had the chance to meet you and to talk with you. I've learned a lot today, and I'm really grateful for your time.
You too. Thanks so much for the opportunity. It was
So,
really fun.
yeah, you bet. And thanks to all the listeners who made it this far into the podcast. We'll catch you next week. Thanks so much for listening to the episode today. Listen, I know how valuable an hour of your time can be, and for you to take that busy time out of your day and spend it with us, it really means a lot. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider liking and subscribing on whatever platform you're on. And don't forget to leave a comment. Tell us what you thought about the interview. Ask us questions. Let us know what other digital topics you'd like to hear about in the future. We're here to add value to your life and elevate your digital presence online. If you'd like some help doing that, reach out to me at fireusmarketing.com. See you on the next one.